Just started recording, so I think we're good. All right, I'm going to say welcome again from the Office of Accessible Education. My name is James Merrick. I'm the Associate Director here.
Trying to get the right bar. I am Heather Steffen. I am the Accommodations Coordinator at the Office of Accessible Education. We welcome you. This is very exciting. We only expected 17 participants and we're up to 30, so I am very excited.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, if you can check your microphones to turn them to mute, so we can present our information, then we can open the floor up for questioning, but that would definitely help minimize the distractions. If you could turn your microphones to mute, just check that, everyone, please. Okay, so again, my name is James. We are the Office of Accessible Education. We are located in the Benson Memorial Center at Santa Clara University's campus. We are on the lower level. And when you come and get acquainted to campus, you will come here for the bookstore, you'll come here for your access card. If you go, and absolutely to dine as well. And if you come to the lower level, we are located right next to the radio station. And Heather and I are on campus. Our office is open 8 to 5, and you can both call, walk in, or you can shoot us an email at oae@scu.edu. And then the goal of our office is to accommodate students with disabilities in an academic setting, but we also provide accommodations for
Oops. Hold on, James.
You muted me.
I did. I apologize. I clicked the wrong person.
Okay, but to catch up with my thought, so we can accommodate for a variety of different things. Depends on what students bring to us and what type of disabilities they have diagnosed, and we will go through that process in just a second.
There we go. Sorry, I'm doing two screens here. I got lost.
No worries. Okay, so an important note to make for all students applying to colleges, not just at Santa Clara, but in general at like the higher ed level, is that the protections are different. The laws are different. So in high school and K through 12, students are supported with accommodations through IEPs or Section 504 programs, and they are success-based. So the parent and teachers are advocates for students, and a lot of it is done behind the scenes, and the student is benefiting from these accommodations. Now, they are success-based, so it's the school's responsibility to seek out students with disabilities and to support them to feel and become successful as best as they can in their current class and environment. Now, that is protected under the IDEA law. Now, when you transition into the higher ed level, the law protections change a little bit, and it's mostly through ADA, and it is access-based. Now, that discrepancy is really important, and we tell students about that every time they meet with us, is that students need to advocate for their own accommodations. The school is no longer seeking out, identifying, testing them. That is not the responsibility of the university. It is the student's responsibility to reach out to the disability services on campus for Santa Clara University. That's the Office of Accessible Education. We will then conduct our process, and we'll walk through that in just a second. And we want to make sure that students understand that it's access-based. Access-based being that we want them to have access to the environment that they are participating in. We want to level the playing field through accommodations to make sure that this student's experience, each student's experience is equitable, as it is for any student without a disability. So that is a very important discrepancy. So we use that lens very frequently in our conversations about how we're accommodating students to make sure that our students are all being accommodated in an equitable way and that the playing field is level according to ADA law. And then we do have links in the PowerPoint, which we will send out following this, to kind of get some more reading on the discrepancies between those two. Heather, you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to academic accommodations, we do provide accommodations based on housing and dining. So we do provide the individualized need-based accommodations, again, for both housing and dining, and we do encourage registration and application with OAE by May 15th. We have this deadline so that way it gives OAE plenty of time to process and interact with your student to make sure we're very clear on the accommodations that are needed in our housing on campus. But it also gives us opportunity to communicate that information with our housing office so that way they can continue to work with your student in finding the right physical location, as well as the residential learning community programs that are a part of our campus that are assigned to the different physical dorm spaces on campus. If you have questions about the housing application itself, we do encourage you to reach to the housing office. We don't have access to that application. So it's housing@scu.edu, or of course, you can always call at 408-554-4900, and housing can assist you through any of the application process itself for on-campus housing. There we go. And then the next question I'm sure is, well, how do I register with you guys? So definitely take a look at our website. At the SCU website, you can do a quick search with OAE. We should be the first thing that you pop up. We have both a video on how to register with our office, as well as step-by-step written instructions on our website. So feel free to explore that location as much as you feel comfortable. The steps. So once you do register with our office, so we have an online system that we take your application, any documentation that you can provide to us to give us a better understanding of disability and accommodation. We take both of those, we read those thoroughly, and then we email our communication to the student regarding next steps to the email that's on the application. So we find that as students transition from high school to college, some of those emails are deactivated because they're linked with their high school. So please make sure that that email that's on the application is something that the student has availability to access at any time. That is where we will send all of our communication to. Once we email the students regarding next steps, we have an interactive meeting with the student. We try to onboard the students as much as we can over the summer. So the majority of those are through our Zoom meetings. But once students are on campus, or if you're local, we would love to meet you guys in person, both the students, and if parents are happy to attend, we can even address some questions that maybe you have as outstanding questions as well. But we do try to work with the students exclusively as much as possible to make sure that they are comfortable with our online system, how to use accommodations in their academics career with us. And we always invite the students to use this as a resource. Anything else on that one, James?
No, you covered it greatly.
All right. And we're here. So
I have a quick question.
yes.
Yep.
Is there, or what is the difference between applying to register to the OAE, registering for the OAE, or being registered on the OAE? Is like their approval process? Like how do you know your status?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So we have different levels of registration in the process. So students can send an application in and maybe don't have documentation. Maybe that's something that's still pending. So we would interact with the student to say, we have your application, but we need a little bit more information. So they would stay pending in our system, but they're in the process of registering with us. When they are completely reviewed, that's when we would communicate to the students around next steps of, you are almost finally fully registered with us. And that's when we ask the students to interact with us, whether it's through Zoom or in person. When they finish their registration with us, that's when accommodations are made available for them to use in their academic and or housing. And once that's established, that's available to them for the rest of their academic career with us, as long as there's no changes or adjustments that need to be made.
Okay.
Did I answer that?
You did, and I suspect that there might be a problem with my son's email going to spam because he hasn't received any emails, and it doesn't appear very clear how to go to your website and see your status Like if we know we applied and I've called you guys and you said that we're in your system.
Yeah.
But as far as the next steps, and if you've reached out or if there's something pending, there doesn't appear to be a way to like go to you and find out through the website. We have to call or maybe dig through our spam folder. So it's just a concern that I have with my student.
No, thank you for bringing that up. So once students submit their application and documentation, it's not reopened to the student. Just because we need to have something stagnant so we know where to start. We do send emails out saying, thank you for your application. Right now for our incoming class, we are not starting the review until I think next month. So we'll be done with like the first round of midterms for our active students. We're halfway through the spring quarter, so we can really focus all of our attention on our incoming students. What I can do for you is, if you don't mind sending me, let me put my email in the chat. If you want to email me directly regarding your student, I can certainly follow up and see what's going on with that. So let me, email us at the OAE@scu.edu. Direct messages to me saying, hi, Heather, we met at the preview day, the virtual preview day, just looking for a status, and then I can follow up. I don't have a problem doing that at all, because I am concerned if you haven't been getting any communication from us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, you're on mute, James.
Thanks. We have a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm going to read them, and then Heather and I will take them. Are the steps: register with OAE first, then make the application for accommodations? So when you register with OAE, that is the start of your application. Office of Accessible Education has a portal that you will apply. You can submit documentation simultaneously. When you apply, that documentation is reviewed, and then we will establish a meeting time with the students via Zoom, via in person, and that will be when we discuss accommodations. But first, we will go through the interactive conversation, which is both student participated and our office participating in it, and that is where we have that conversation about accommodations and then take next steps accordingly. Next question. I am still deciding between a few schools. Should I still send in my OAE application if I later decide to go somewhere else? So we can, like Heather stated, we are going to start reviewing applications for newly accepted students. It is not binding to SCU if you send us your documentation and we start to review it and we begin the process for accommodations. You're not bound to SCU if we do start that process. So I think the short answer would be yes. All right. And then also, do we do the housing application in parallel with OAE process? Heather, what was your answer on that?
Yes, absolutely. Because there's a 2-year residency requirement for campus. So you'll definitely need to go through that housing process. Accommodations in housing, that would come in after that housing application was due for our incoming students. Okay,
great. Next question. How many students are registered with OAE? That fluctuates, but it is growing significantly each year. I believe last time we checked, we were probably between like 900 and 1,000 that actively receive accommodations through us. We have students that have received accommodations that are archived, that are coming back at certain times. So that number will change things. And then we definitely also have students that will just have accommodations through us, but they don't have to meet with us every semester. I don't remember if we touched on this, but so once you get accommodations through our office, if they're for whatever reason not a temporary accommodation due to your disabling condition being temporary, then you'll have them for your time at SCU, and we will allow you to continue to use them. You just have to re-request them every new quarter, every new semester, depending on what school you're going to. So that is an important step, but it's really not a heavy load. So once we do the important stuff at the beginning, then it's just all about requesting them every quarter, every semester. So that is why I think our numbers sound very big, and we do have a lot of students being accommodated with us, but you're not necessarily talking with us every quarter, every semester. That's, if we were talking to 900 students, we need probably a lot more Jameses and Heathers walking around. Okay, the next question was, does your office or another office help with time management, executive functioning skills? Okay, it's a great question, and it's something that we have been exploring in depth recently. Our office has been working with another team member that is great at providing academic coaching. And then so if a student's needs reaches a certain level and we have space, we have started to create a space where our office is a little bit more transformational as opposed to just transactional. And so we are definitely trying to support that specific need because we are seeing a lot of that at SCU's campus. So it's something our office is really trying to explore and to maximize our efforts in supporting. So yes, is the answer. We are doing our best to help with that.
If I can, we also have the Drama and Advising Center. So all of you folks at one point or another will probably interact with them. Those are our university advisors. There's also a Tutoring and Learning Resources Center that does offer tutoring, free tutoring for our lower division classes. And they do have workshops around time management, note-taking skills, test-taking skills. So they do offer some workshops outside of our office as well that can address that.
Great. Next question is, what are the qualifications for OAE? Is it only for people who have disabilities, or does this include those who have needed base? I'm gonna answer the question the best I can due to my understanding of it. So the Office of Accessible Education specifically accommodates students with disabilities, students with diagnosis that reaches disability level, where there is major life impact. And our goal is to accommodate according to those needs. So in order to get accommodations through our office, there has to be documented just validity of a disability and a disabling condition, yes. Is it possible to have an appointment with OAE prior to or after registering to discuss potential accommodations? Heather, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm going to give a really bad answer, which is yes and no. So we do try to make ourselves as available as possible to our incoming class. We have to prioritize our current active students first. So if they have appointment requests in, we would honor our active students first. And then as soon as we were available, we would start meeting and making ourselves available to our incoming students. We also have, and this is why we're also outreaching as best we can during the preview day. So we will have some tabling. Our actual students assistants and a student who's registered with OAE will be tabling. So if you guys are here on campus on Saturday, those folks will also be a resource for you. Emailing oae@scu.edu. Is also a great way. If you have some questions that maybe we get answered that's maybe a little bit more generic, we can assist you that way. If we find that maybe further, more in-depth conversation is needed, we would certainly reach out to you and again, try to get you scheduled in for an appointment. It's usually about middle of our spring quarter, which we're approaching, that we can really start focusing all of our attention and availability for our incoming class. So you may have a bit of a delay for the next couple of weeks from us, but we then start really kind of, again, 100% of our time being ready to welcome our new folks. So sort of an answer.
I wanted to step back for just a second. I saw that Kenneth, you had asked a question and I wanted to answer it because I think you got signed off and signed back in. But your question was, what are qualifications for OAE? I don't know if you missed it, but I just want to give you the opportunity to hear it again. What are your qualifications for OAE is the person have disability. So the person does need to have a disability to apply and get accommodated through our office. And that goes through the whole process, but there does need to be a disabling condition. And Victoria, you had a question.
So you just answered my question earlier, but I just kind of wanted to give a little background because I'm looking at other schools, but their intent to enroll deadlines on May 1st. So I was just wondering if it was even possible to talk to somebody on just to get information on what accommodations are even offered in the first place, because this is a private school and the other ones I'm looking at are public schools. So I know the systems are different.
So I can address that a little bit.
Okay.
So accommodations, we try to customize accommodations to the student as best we can based off of their disability and documentation. It's not something that we see set in stone. We really think of this as an organic process with you, with the student. So a great example that I give is somebody who comes in and maybe has time and a half on exams. But as they experience exams on campus, it's not providing them the same level of access that other accommodations may. And so we would interact with the student saying, great, this doesn't work. Why? What's your experience? What does that look like? And we would explore with the student other accommodations that may support them. So while it doesn't necessarily answer your question of, can I meet with you to talk about my specific accommodations, just please be reassured that we work as closely as we can with students, as long as they let us know what is and isn't working. So it's not something that we determine on our own, it's determined with the student because they're the ones experiencing the use of these accommodations.
Okay, that does answer, because I'm coming from a community college, so I already have my baseline, so that makes that process a bit easier, and hearing that it is more flexible and organic process. Thank you.
It is. Yeah, thank you.
It's also important to note that you had said us being a private university, because we're a private university, it does not exclude the fact that we are federally funded in a lot of ways. So we are still mandated to protect students with the same type of protections under ADA as any public universities would.
Okay, thank you
Bound
so
by the
much
same
for
laws.
clarification.
Yeah. All right. Next question. You may have already answered this question already, but can I register with OAE first and then follow with documentation as long as it's all done by May 15th? So in order for our process to completely get underway, we do need documentation to be provided to us so we can review it and take both the two-pronged approach of documentation and student self-report and get the best full scenario for the student's needs. Otherwise, we would ask for the documentation before we have the opportunity to schedule an actual appointment and intake and conversation with students. So we would need that documentation first. And until that happens, the process will be stalled.
And the May 15th deadline is really for those that have housing accommodations. So if you are not anticipating or you do not need accommodations within housing, that May 15th deadline is not necessarily for you. We have students apply on a rolling basis, but that deadline for May 15th is really for those with housing, so we can get that in place as quickly as we can.
There was that May 15th for transfer students as well?
No, because I think transfer students have a different deposit deadline, if I remember right, and they're admitted even later than our first year students. The housing availability for transfer students, because they don't fall under that 2-year residency requirement. I don't know what that really looks like for them right now.
Okay. All right. When a student meets with you and has documentation of disability, do they have to ask for specific accommodations that they want, or do you have accommodations that are typically given based on the disability? I think that Heather did a pretty good job answering according to the process, and that how it's uniquely geared towards each student experience, because no disability is the same, and everyone's experience with similar diagnosis is even different. So we take that fully into account, and we do not have a set accommodation that we would provide for a student that presents and reports having a diagnosis of ADHD or presents and reports having a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. We don't approach the process that way. There will be a lot of similarities in needs. If you think about just through the lens of someone that is diagnosed with ADHD, often that comes with that is executive functioning deficits. So we do find similarities in the accommodations that we do end up providing and affording. However, it is unique to each student. So students can, in their application, say, we've been accommodated for this, this, and this in the past, or I've had these accommodations. And then those are good guides for us to then ask about, okay, why were you accommodated with time and a half in your tests? Why were you accommodated with the ability to reschedule your exams? And then we can really have a deeper conversation and get into detail about the whys for those accommodations. And we're not bound to those accommodations. So if we saw something that was happening in high school, it may not be appropriate in the collegiate setting. And that's an important thing for students to know when they carry over into a new setting. And then there also is the reality that we may see something that was not happening in the high school setting that we would think and advise on accommodating for. So it's very unique to each student experience and conversation.
And I just want to, I've seen a couple requests. So the slide, I'll make sure we include a link to OAE in the recording. We'll work with the folks who coordinated Preview Day to get this posted and available for you. So we will make sure that this is all available.
Okay, how many faculty members work within OAE? I don't know if I understand that question specifically. If you ask how many staff members, because faculty we usually reserve for professors and instructors. Staff members, we currently have 4 members with OAE. And then what is the size of the actual OAE? I think if we're talking about number of students we accommodate, we have about, again, 900 to 1,000, I would say, give or take, going by semesters. And then space, we have a shared space. Heather, did we talk about how much like testing room we have? How many people we fit into testing?
I'm sorry, say it again.
How many students we can fit in testing rooms? I think maybe like.
Okay, so the actual physical OAE space, we share that with the Drama and Advising Center, the tutoring and learning resources, just so that way students can come into this space for multiple reasons. And we share that with tutoring and learning resources, and we work closely with that so that we can train their tutors and the folks who are presenting workshops to try to be prepared and know how to present for students who do have learning differences. So we share a very large space that's an open space for that. And then we have currently a small testing center that's made up of 4 private rooms, 1 smaller room that holds up to 7 testers at a time, and another room that holds up to 19 testers at a time. So right now that's basically our testing center. And then we have our staff spaces. So that's right now what the physical makeup of our testing, the OAE office looks like. So I hope that answered the question.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have accommodations for each class and how often can we change it? So accommodations are request-based. So they also opt in through Santa Clara. It is the prerogative of the student to and you would click in our portal, like which accommodations you want applied to which classes. Like some classes don't have like formal exams. So those students may not need to send a notification letter to that instructor. And that's done through the portal. So what you would do is, like I mentioned, every new quarter or semester you go in and you request the accommodations, you can click which classes you want to send them to, and that's on you. And that's your responsibility as a student in college now. And then how often can we change that? So accommodations can always be revisited. If there's new documentation and new diagnosis, they're not static and they don't just stay the same because we're very aware that student situations are changing and new diagnoses are very possible as anyone grows, right? So we are always open to revisiting. We would just have to review the documentation. We would have to review the self-report, whatever it is. And we would meet with the student and then make sure we are providing those new accommodations going forward. Saw on the information of the SCU website that the medical documentation must be within the last 4 years. Is that correct? My son was diagnosed more than 4 years ago. Do I need to get a new evaluation? So we like to use the language current documentation. And I think that that's important because if the documentation is still very relevant and it captures the student's experience, then it's likely that we would consider it in our process and move forward with that. We are very aware, very hyper aware even of how expensive evaluations can be, and seeing new providers for a psychoeducational evaluation, a neurological report, anything like that. So we do not try to just ask okay, we need that updated just because it doesn't fall within that 4-year mark. That's a framework for us for what current looks like, but we're very aware that you may have a diagnosis that was given 6-7 years ago, and it's still very valid. And you still have current meetings with therapists, and you still are doing the work for that type of diagnosis. So that would be very relative. And if you have any questions, you can direct that directly to our office. We can look at it. Heather, do you have anything additional with that?
No, that was good.
Okay, can I find details about what the documentation should consist of on your website?
Yes.
Where is that located on our website?
Yeah, so if you go to the website, so the scu.edu/OAE, there should be a tab along the top bar that says prospective students. That means perspective to OAE specifically, not even perspective to Santa Clara. And if you go to there, you'll find links on how to register, disability documentation guidelines. And then we have it under some general categories like ADHD, medical, physical, and then we provide some bullet points of what are the ideal pieces of information we'd like to see in that documentation provided to us. So that is on our website.
Okay. Another question, do you have accommodations such as read aloud features, distraction-free testing, support with note-taking? And the answer is yes. So we do have distraction limited testing. We do not have distraction free because we are very limited in the space that we have for someone to test in a single room by themselves. We have a lot of students, as you can tell by the number, that do receive accommodations. So we do our best to provide distraction limited environment, and we can also support that with noise canceling headphones or earplugs. So we can kind of work around the lack of space that we have. But I just want to make that distinction very clear because that's important. Support with note taking. We do have note taking. We also have note taking software that we will accommodate students with called Glean. That is something that we accommodate based on need. And then read aloud features. So yes, we have text to speech, speech to text that you can be accommodated for on testing. And then we would also just give you feedback on good free sources for that because there's a lot of good free stuff out there. You just ask for that, and when we're doing the accommodation meeting, and we can get that to you. What is the deadline for academic accommodations? There is no deadline. So we would start reviewing accommodation requests for the upcoming new year, I think at the end of May. And then the accommodations are always like rolling. Whenever a student applies, we get to that student whoever is next in line. So when you apply, you're just in a queue then, and then we get to the review of your documentation, then we'll set up a meeting with you. So there's no hard deadline. You can always apply for accommodations throughout your entire time here at Santa Clara University. Even if you haven't been accommodated from freshman to junior year, if you want to get accommodated senior because you are recognizing disabling condition and disabling needs, or you have a new diagnosis, say a concussion, that can come at any time, right? So no deadline. All right, you're welcome, Isabel. How long does it typically take to get an appointment for current students? Where are we at right now, Heather?
I'm going to say 2 weeks, but it really just depends on the availability that students provide to us. So if they only give us a day or two, it's harder for us to schedule with them. Then there's back and forth communication trying to get them scheduled at a time that matches up with an advisor's availability. But averaging 2 weeks right now, and we definitely want to make sure we can trim that down to maybe a week to a few days.
That'd be great. How are the accommodations communicated to faculty? So once the meeting happens with students and we do move forward with accommodations and they're approved for that quarter and semester and beyond, we then send an eligibility letter out to faculty through our OAE portal. Now, students will have access to that OAE portal and they'll have then user profile that they can go in and request anything, send us new documentation, re-request their accommodations. But it'll go through that OAE portal, go directly to that faculty member's email. And with that, they can then reach out to us directly if they have any questions about accommodations. And every new quarter, every new semester, students accommodations are sent through our portal. Once they re-request them, we'll send them out as a new eligibility letter, and we'll have documentation of that letter being sent. So if there's ever any issues, we can always refer back to it. Well, Professor, on this date, you were sent this letter. We need to move forward with providing those accommodations. And then if a student's neuropsych evaluation is more than 5 years old, do you require an updated evaluation to provide accommodations, or would current documentation from pediatrician suffice? So I believe we answered that question for the most part based on current documentation. If it is still relevant and still current to the condition for that student or the conditions, then we would definitely consider it. If it is based on something that, let's say, was from when the student was in kindergarten or the first grade. There's a lot of growth that happened between then and college. So we're probably going to ask for more documentation. And speaking to the documentation from pediatrician, I think that it's best to get, well, depending on the condition, right? If it's a mental health condition, we do look to get neuropsych evaluations. Like those are like very detailed reports that are very helpful for our decision-making process when it comes to accommodations. And sometimes we do not get the best documentation from a physician just because of the type of reports that they will send. It's just different reporting structures. But in general, if it's a relevant condition that pediatrician has diagnosed and there is a history and they can provide major life impacts and how it impacts academics, and you can find this information on our website, that would be an appropriate documentation if the pediatrician is the one that would be doing the diagnosis. Yeah. All right, that is the questions in the queue. Is there any outstanding questions? Our group has dwindled, so I'm assuming we answered a good amount of them already, and you're very welcome. And if that's not the case, feel free to message us at oe@scu.edu. And if not, have a great time over your visit to Santa Clara, and we will hopefully see you soon.
I want to stop recording. So just in case somebody does want to ask a question that maybe